Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those wanting to learn more about creating financial wellness. We're going to look at different life cycles and we're going to explore them both financially and emotionally, because our personal finances tend to be more about the emotions associated with our money than the finances themselves. And just as a general rule, the healthier we are emotionally, the better decisions we tend to make, whether they are financial or outside of our finances. Although we may be somewhat general in our discussion, we do want to hear from you. So please call in, or you can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. Or you can post comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, or any of the other channels that you might be listening to us on. So recently I heard about something that I think is quite an amazing idea. It's called the broken vase theory, or what many of you out there might call a broken vase theory. And it's often used in psychology. The gist of the theory goes like this, that let's say you have a really expensive, precious vase, and it's been in the family generations, it's expensive, it's got meaning to you, and for whatever reason, it breaks. It falls off the counter or wherever it's being held. So what do? You really have three choices. You can try to put it all back together, which you may see some cracks and glue, or is it really going to be back like it was? Or you can throw it away, all the pieces, or you can create a new mosaic out of those pieces and create something new and beautiful. This is used with people often going through trauma, and in divorce, a lot of people do experience trauma. So they can try to be who they were prior to that trauma. They can throw the experience away, so to speak, and pretend it never happened. Or they can work on creating a beautiful new mosaic out of life. They can take that experience and create something new and beautiful. And today we're lucky to have Melissa Kalil join us to navigate how we can become this beautiful new mosaic that can hopefully positively impact the lives of those around us. And we're going to explore the transformative power of divorce. Melissa has a rich background being a certified divorce coach through ICF, certified divorce specialist, has education in counseling, mental health background, and more. So Melissa, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Hirsch. You didn't mention how we can put the vase back together with gold as well, right? That's what I'm aiming for.
We did, but that actually is a different theory in the psychology world. So, but we can. I think that plays with the idea of what we're trying to explore today as well. So, absolutely. Before we kind of get into our topic, I think it's nice for people listening if they can hear a little bit about your background and kind of understand where you're coming from. How did you get to where you are, and how did you get some of the passion to do what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. I obviously, like most of us that are drawn to divorce coaching, a wounded warrior myself, went through my own difficult divorce and, circumstances that left me with a decision as to whether I'm going to be a victim or whether I'm going to really turn this around and make something of it. I kind of have a history of a glass half full or half empty mindset, and I was always kind of finding myself looking to other people to validate or reassure, and going to therapy and just sort of not getting what I needed. And then I discovered this idea called coaching, which up until then had sounded very, I mean, I hate to say this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but a little bit bogus, a little bit bougie. Who has a coach? That sounds so pretentious. That's something only for celebrities. But when I really discovered what it was all about, it was exactly what I always needed. It's what I never knew I needed. And I was kind of looking to get in therapy, but getting frustrated because I was kind of sort of finding myself constantly against a wall. So discovered coaching during my divorce and just loved it. I thought it was so helpful. The way I define coaching is getting someone from A to B. And when you're in a divorce, that's exactly what you want, specifically with your mindset. So, and then I've always just had a real passion for analytical thinking, understanding what people are thinking, what drives people to behave the way they behave. So, started sort of subsequently studying counseling from then, and just really loved the field of divorce coaching. I'm passionate about making it more accessible, more respected and understood. And then, I have 3 little girls, and I again want to show them what happens when you have adversity, and the choice is either to sit and mope or do something about it. And then finally, I have an incredible family. My parents are my divorce coaches. They really are. Like, they are just phenomenal people, and I feel like everyone deserves somebody like, parents like mine. And if they don't have that, then we need to go create a profession that is basically like your partner through a divorce. So that's kind of what's got me to where I am right now. And then, like, I'll just say one more time, fascinated by what makes someone resilient versus someone who just sort of stays stuck. And that's really that's kind of what I'm studying, and what really drives me to keep doing what I'm doing.
And that is something that can happen so easily in this process. And, our topic today is the transformative power of divorce. And I have to admit, I've been through a divorce. I've been working in the divorce world for years. The first thing somebody's thinking about when they're faced with a divorce is not, oh, this is a transformative power opportunity, right? It's really not the first thing. There are several areas, obviously, that this impacts. It impacts kind of your whole life. But some of the main ones are career, money, parenting, rediscovering yourself, because often we've lost who we are in a marriage. And I think I'd like to explore each one of these individually. I think each one really does warrant its own discussion and focus. So let's start, if we can, with what the transformative power of divorce means to you when it comes to your career, because that's a big piece of people's lives as well, and maybe a very different career, obviously, than what they have had in the past.
Yeah. So look, there's two categories here. There's those of us that were never, have to face a complete career reentry. They haven't worked in many years. They are, lacking in experience, lacking in skills, lacking in confidence. And then there's obviously people that are working and going through divorce while they're working, and that can be very distracting, and they lose focus. So there's a lot of productivity loss, and it just seeps into everything in your life. So the way I look at it is when something like this happens, it's kind of like you said, that vase is broken, right? Like, it's shattered on the ground. And this is an opportunity to try to sort of like step back and assess things like, what are your actual values? What are your skills? What are your strengths? And it sounds fluffy. And again, I tell everyone this, like, I was not the kind of person that asked myself these deep questions before. Right. But when you're going through something like this, like when that vase is shattered, you kind of have to ask yourself those questions, because you have to put the vase back together again. You have to figure out, well, what are the strengths of this vase? How am I going to build it back together? So I see a divorce as an opportunity to figure, if you have to get back into the workforce, which most of us, let's be honest, do, what's going to be more in alignment with who you really are? What are you going to enjoy spending the rest of your life doing? And then being very intentional and very thoughtful about what that's going to, what that's going to be, taking the time to find a job and find a position that you love, or that you feel you actually, are doing something better, and you're not just going blindly into a career. The same with if you already have a job. So a lot of people, again, the vase is broken. They're like, well, I might as well just the whole house may just burn down now, including my career. Let me take a step back and see if I'm even loving the job I'm doing. Does this job really speak to my values and who I really am as a person? So there's an opportunity in there to either up-level the career you have, or to find something you love. Like, I found something I truly love. And I think if I'd never gone through this, there's no ways I would have gone down this path. I would not have gone back to get another master's degree. I would never have turned to coaching. And so I see that as, a very fortunate. So that's where I feel career can be, like, a divorce can be very transformative for your career and your vocation.
I'm in the same boat after my divorce, or
Yeah,
I should say before my divorce. I would never have thought, I didn't even know there was such a kind of career opportunity or path, let
exactly.
alone, now that I have been doing this for years and years, and, it's by far the most rewarding career I've ever had. And there's a couple things I just want to add to or reiterate maybe. One of them is you do need to look at, if you have a current career, what is that current career? Was it something where I was just maybe a second income and I needed to fill some time and that's what it was? Or was it really something that was fulfilling and something I felt created value? So being able to understand that, and if you're in the workforce, what does it mean for you? The other one is there are some challenges getting back into the workforce. And it's rare, I think, that you get the opportunity to really evaluate and say, what do I want to do when I go back in? You kind of have a little bit of time potentially, hopefully, to do that. For those of you who are in that situation, that maybe you've been a stay-at-home parent, I am going to do a shameless plug. I have a free course. It takes you about an hour and a half. It's all about getting into the workforce, whether you're coming out of college or going back in. It's definitely worth it. Talks about the benefits, the paperwork, understanding your paycheck, all of these kind of things in there. And as I said, it's free. So go to my website, lifecycle.financial, and you'll see it's called Financial Wellness Academy. But I do think it presents on the career side such a wonderful ability to really look at, how do I want to spend a significant chunk of my day? What am I going to do? Am I going to be able to create something that really is fulfilling and potentially helps other people, as you and I have looked at as well? So,
Yeah.
and then mindset becomes such a big thing, whether it's career, whether it's your finances. We all know, or I think mostly know, that there's we got to learn how to manage money. We got to potentially look at our finances in a different way than we ever have before. There might be the idea of scarcity, not being able to make it. People's mindset is such a key piece as a whole going through a divorce, and helping our audience understand, how does someone prepare for all of these items around divorce? How do you kind of bring that topic up? Maybe what are some of the discussions that you would have around that with people?
Well, the first is definitely sort of getting a baseline as to what their thoughts are right now. Like, what are they thinking right now about what's happening? How distorted are they? Most of us are in this incredibly, we hear it all online, the fight, flight, freeze, the old pop psychology is all about that right now. But it's for a reason. It's like, we are wired to think of the worst case scenario. And I heard, like, one of my coaches just put it so simply to me. He was like, Melissa, we as humans, we give so much airtime to the worst case scenario, so much airtime to the worst case. It's immediately where our brain goes. But as a coach, you're going to help your clients. We're not just going to slap on toxic positivity. I don't believe in that either, because I think that creates a lot of shame, a lot of like, oh my goodness, why can't I just move on? Why can't I just flip a switch and feel better? So you feel worse about yourself, because like, everyone's telling me to move on. Everyone's telling me to, transform and this amazing rebirth. And yes, that is possible eventually. But right now you're sort of stuck on like a really much lower emotional sort of playing field. So what you do is you balance the negative, the most extreme, with something more realistic, So what is a more realistic outcome here? You're going to go to the worst case. I'm never going to find a job. Okay, well, let's look at that now. Do you know anyone that's found a job after their divorce? And they're like, well, yeah, actually, I do know someone that found a job. And, now that I think about it, he or she loves, what they're doing.
Sorry, just a quick, there's a shout out, Natalie Jackson. Thank you.
Yes.
For the woot woot. Sorry.
I may know who that is. But anyway, so yeah, like, there's people that can completely transform themselves, overnight, but then we feel shamed and feel like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad. I can't do this. So I give them more realistic ways of looking at things. What's a more realistic way of looking at things? Okay, maybe I'm not going to be matching my lifestyle exactly how it was when I was married. but I'm going to go find something. I'm going to bring some money in, and I'm going to be learning how to get back into the workforce. It's going to take a while. Okay, so what are the odds of that happening? Well, that's higher likelihood than me never finding a job. So you're sort of trying to balance it with the more realistic thought.
Right.
When you have a more realistic thought, your brain is going to latch onto that and act from that place much better than a place of, oh, I'm going to go and completely revamp myself overnight. So you're sort of getting a sense of where they are. Of course, if they're at that high level, they're going to they just want to go and give it hell, then fine. You want to create actions behind that. But most of them are at a very lower, not feeling so good about everything and their outlook.
So, I went to a seminar, and I'm literally talking about 16, 18 years ago. Okay. And the person giving it, he was a keynote speaker at a conference, and he was the top sales guy at an IBM type company. And, he was the sales guy of all the sales guys. And he started his speech with a quick little thing. And he said, the vast majority of the time we think about something, and this is without the stress of divorce, by the way, we think about it in the negative.
Yeah.
He said the statistics show about 60% of our thoughts are in a negative format, right? And we think in concepts, not in words. So we actually think of 600 plus words a minute, and 60% of that's in a negative format.
Exactly.
And then he lost me. I actually literally do not remember anything else that he said, because I started evaluating my life at that point. Yeah. But it was unbelievable. And then add to that the stress of a divorce. You kind of, to put it in a very, I guess, aggressive way, you're behind enemy lines already. And now you've got to overcome this. So I think realism and bringing a realistic view is important. I think taking kind of an account of what's going on and stepping back sometimes becomes such an important thing. And, one of the things I always look at, and I am a big proponent of, is evaluating and learning, again, what are your priorities and your values? Most likely you're not going to have the exact same standard of living as you had before. And so what becomes important to you, you can often live off less money and have a more fulfilling life. Exactly. And so being able to look at things realistically and also remember who you are and learn, again, those values and priorities, I think becomes such an important piece. And that's not just on the finance side, although finance is sometimes what you need to live your life, but let's look at your kids, right? How do you engage and you may have less time with your kids, but how do you make it more rewarding? So let's go into that. Let's talk about the parenting side of it.
Yes, for sure.
It can be hard enough when you're married, right? I mean, and there's a very different dynamic having to parallel parent during and after divorce. And yes, I stole that phrase from you. Yeah. I like it. I really do. But let's talk about that and help people see the opportunity there.
Yeah.
If you would.
Well, I just want to say, touch on something. Yes, the values and the purpose, like you had mentioned before, and I'd mentioned at the beginning. If you go to any coach, one of the first exercises they're going to have you do is to go through a values inventory for that very reason, because you are reevaluating everything that's important to you, and that comes into your, how you parent as well. One of the things that I tell people is, it's like you said, you're behind enemy lines. So when you parenting, you are immediately, you're almost like a constant triggered state. And so you definitely have to watch yourself. You're shorter with your kids, you're more impatient, you're more stressed, and that affects your parenting. That very much affects your parenting. And so what I tell people is, this I love this phrase, don't cheat yourself, because you need to take care of yourself and you speak to somebody or do something so that you can be the parent you want to be. Because when you look back on this, you're going to feel, you don't want to, as parents, we feel bad about how we behave, and then it kind of eats away at us. So the more you can take care of yourself so that you can be the parent when be the parent you want to be when you have your kids, the obviously better you're going to feel in the long run. Another very important thing that I want to touch on is, obviously, this ties into career as well. You're going to have your kids less. And one of the things that the only way I could justify the time spent away with my kids is if I was actively doing something to improve myself. And that's how I went back to studying and went back, even just teaching myself how to do things online. I spent hours just messing around with on YouTube videos, how to build a website, how to do social media. And then, started taking certifications because I was like, I've got all this time away from my children. What am I going to do with it? And you feel better about yourself when you're filling it with something to improve rather than wallowing. And your kids your kids notice that. And then you are a more intentional, connected parent, hopefully, when they're home. Of course, we all have our moments. I have my moments when they're home where I just lose it. But when they are home, you feel you can give them more of yourself because you've spent a lot of time, doing something for yourself. It is kind of a silver lining of divorce that you do get a little more time to yourself. And then it's a matter of what you do with that time.
Yeah, so many things resonated with me there. Everybody knows I'm a cold, heartless, certified divorce financial analyst, CPA, all that, right? But one of the things I do also with my clients is I go through that values exercise. Yeah. I do it a little bit, I think, differently, but I do it specifically because I'm looking at a financial strategy.
Sure.
And so I run through those priorities with my clients. Talk to me about your kids, talk to me about all this kind of stuff, right? But then we also take the same piece and we evaluate what does my client believe the spouse is going to feel about all those as well.
Right.
And that can help you in your strategy, in building your strategy anyway, and being able to understand what are going to be the hard conversations or what can I give up in order to get more of what I want, things like that. And as a parent, often, not always, but often we do feel guilty about what's going on. And is my kid going to be okay? Am I going to mess them up for life kind of thing? Yep. I think what you said there is so important about the role modeling becomes enormously important because this is adversity that very few people really, it's considered one of the 3 most stressful events in somebody's life. And how are you going to role model adversity and stress to your children?
Yep.
Are you going to show them, that when you face a hard time, you're just going to cave? Are you going to show them that really you can thrive and you can still be an amazing parent and you can still be a productive person at work and all the rest that comes with that? And I think everybody would much rather be that latter person of being a positive role model because it is so important. And that's really, what we want to be always, whether we get divorced or not, for our kids.
Yeah, look, divorce is an adverse childhood event. So a breakup of a family, separation is an adverse childhood event. It has, kids of divorce have a significantly higher, I think it's around in the 20%, around 25% risk of serious problems like alcohol and, a lot of, early promiscuity, as opposed to kids of married families. The antidote to that, time and time again, is connected, warm parenting. So if it doesn't even matter if you only have 50% time with them, when you are with them, if you are a connected parent, warm parent, you don't even need to be 100% like, you can be working, you can be busy, but take the time to really delight in them, connect with them, have them know that you are their safe space. It's kind of like I describe to people, childhood is kind of like a bridge, and your parents are, the feet of the bridge, the standing poles of the bridge. When there's a divorce, that's cut off for these kids. And so they don't have a safe base to go explore the world. There's a lot of risk for them, in that the attachment risk is there, and they just don't have that foundation. But you still have the power to create that, even if it's in your home. And most of us are lucky enough where we have a co-parent that also loves the kids. And that's also part of our transformation, is let that parent do their thing. That's kind of what you were alluding to, the different values in parenting. Part of your divorce has to do with the fact you didn't agree with how you parented. Like, you were both very different parents. That's very hard. That's where radical acceptance comes in. They're going to go to him or her for the weekend. I'm not going to see them. But you know what? As long as they're going to be safe and fine, they get to love that other parent. And that's more important than anything I can be doing, like anything else they could be doing that is, like an extracurricular or a trip or whatever. They allow time with their other parent. And that's very hard for us. it's a tough pill to swallow, but it's so important for your children. And
it is. When you're present, really be present. Don't make your kids wish they were a smartphone, because that's where your attention is, right? Let them understand that they are a priority and the value. And we are running a little over from a break perspective. Melissa, how can people get in touch with you? Let's end this section with that, and then we're going to go to a break.
Okay. I'm on Instagram all the time, Melissa Kalil Coaching. I like to do some sort of humorous reels. I throw some humor into divorce. And then my website is melissakalil.com.
Great. And we will be back in about 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Thanks, Hirsch.
Hi, I'm John Thomas. I want to share with you a professional products and services directory we call Going Solo Directory. And you need to check this out. If you want exposure to your business or are seeking professional product or services, this directory has it all. And that membership, for the many special features, you get the benefit of a worldwide exposure with a 40-minute video interview on an international business show showcase. All this for just one low annual fee. For more information, contact GoingSoloDirectory.com.
Hello and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network, the #1 singles talk radio. And today we are exploring the transformative power of divorce. And I'm going to recap some of the things that we've spoken about with Melissa Kalil, who's joining us. We have covered a lot and some amazing stuff. But the first thing is that it's not the first thing that we think about, that divorce can actually be transformative. And that is important, because if we can even just think about that alone, it puts everything into a much more positive outlook and hopefully positive outcome. I've got to be able to read my handwriting here as we've been speaking, but it is real. And we tend to put up, I think in life, we put up obstacles that sometimes aren't there. And so maintaining that positive outlook and putting positive outcomes in reach are very, very important. Melissa shared some of the things that she did and how she overcame them, which was great. And I think also, as we said on the parenting discussion, how that's positive role modeling for your children, which is so important. We also spoke about relating to being able to transform careers, money, finance. Your mindset came up, how important it is. And then again, we ended there with a discussion around parenting. And that kind of brings us, although there are way more than just these ones that we're discussing today, but the last one we'll probably discuss under kind of the transformation is possibly the most complicated sometimes, but possibly also the most rewarding. And you get the opportunity here to rediscover who you are. That amazing person you possibly even forgot exists because you've been married for 10, 20, 30 years, and you've become the marriage or the mother or the father of children, or you've lost a little bit of who you are, what kind of really got you going, what excited you, and what you enjoy doing, because we tend to become part of that union. So let's talk a little bit about that, if you would. How do you guide people around rediscovering themselves, or even how do we bring up a discussion as to, do you know who you are?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, what things did they enjoy doing before they were married, before they had kids? And maybe they lost a little bit of that, or couldn't give that the same amount of time that they had before. I mean, one thing that hasn't come up, Hirsch, is you and I are connected by something very special. We're both from this beautiful, unique country. And I don't think you and I have had a chance to talk about this, but I'm obsessed with South African wildlife. We are big wildlife fanatics in my family. And while I can't run off there, in my time away from the kids, I can't do a quick flight over to South Africa. I definitely can spend more time, reading about it, or getting excited for the next trip there, or it's just things that I, in my personal situation, in my marriage, kind of put on the back burner and didn't really engage in that passion. So that's one thing. Just what are the things you enjoy doing? Another is, what do you lose yourself in? What do you just spend? What do you sort of do you ever have a moment where you just wake up and realize, oh, the last hour went by and I didn't even realize that, and that's what's great about that, is coming back to, this transformation, is some of us don't even know we may have had something we love doing. I didn't realize I had a creative side, and I loved doing social media and doing little graphics and building a website. I would never have known that about myself. And then what do people compliment you on? What do people say you're great at? Or what do people tell me, Melissa, I didn't even realize, I didn't even think I'd be telling you all these personal details about myself. And that's when I realized, oh, maybe I'm good at being a coach. People always told me I ask a lot of questions, but I tend to draw people out. So you don't really, when you're so, inundated with marriage and parenting, 24/7, you don't really have the time to sort of engage in that. And so that's one way of just sort of realizing, who am I again?
Yeah, I know I've mentioned this a few times on the show, but the first blog I ever wrote was late 14, early 15. I don't remember, but originally I called it Divorce is Awesome, right? And people weren't crazy about the name, but the gist of it really was exactly what you've just said, and rediscovering yourself. And yes, your life might seem miserable and dying a miserable death right now. That's how I felt, and you can read it. It's on my website. It's, I think, the very first blog out there. But the idea was, I created a top 10. You can rediscover and reconnect with yourself. Are there friends that have gone by the wayside that you like? What are the things that, as you said, you kind of lose yourself in? There really are tremendous opportunities in rediscovering yourself and really creating a fulfilling life by doing that. Exactly. We can kind of trudge along, as I think most people do, in what we call the rat race, or we can be a little bit more deliberate and really live our life in the way we want to live our life, as opposed to the way kind of society dictates that you got to get a 9-to-5 job, which is usually much more than 9 to 5, or something like that as well. So I think those are very important, very powerful points that you brought up.
And then you become attractive to other people. I mean, whether you want to date and meet anyone, or if you want to be alone the rest of your life and never think about marriage again, you do become attracted to other people because you have a passion, you have something else going for you, and people pick up on that energy.
In today's world, I think as well, with Meetup and all the other opportunities and apps that you can go and meet people with your specific interests, becomes that much easier. If you're somebody who loves to travel, I recommend you go to goingsolomedia.com. They have a travel group for singles, that CC has put together, that's gone on several, and I know there's some coming up. So I think those are all very, very important. In some ways, with today's technology, as challenging as technology can be in our lives, it also can help us in that transformation sometimes as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's so much more connected, for sure.
Yeah. And I think this brings us a little bit in discovering who we are to kind of this whole classic question in divorce that I love to ask people, because although generally the answer is pretty similar, there's always a little bit of a different take or a little bit of a different perspective. So why coaching versus therapy? And I'm going to ask you to talk, as you answer that, a little bit about what is the difference?
Sure. I love this question, and I can geek out all day. I warned you, if you're going to ask me this question, I'm going to be...
I hate to tell you that we don't have all day. We only got a few more minutes on the show, but let's go with it anyway.
Okay. So you're going to hear this from everyone, that coaching is, therapy is about looking behind, and coaching is about looking forward. I'm going to challenge that a little bit and say that that's not always the case. Because nowadays, in some of the more modern, what we call the postmodern therapeutic approaches, like solution-focused therapy, narrative therapy, it's strength-based. It is actually about looking forward. And similarly, in coaching, you sometimes need to look backwards in order to figure out, oh, where did you get that thought from? Where did you get that limiting belief from? You have to look backwards. So I don't 100% buy that difference. As far as I'm concerned, obviously therapy is a medical model. It is very regulated. Coaching is not regulated. So those are kind of like more the, technical differences. Another big difference is coaching is more about encouraging. It's a little more encouraging, a little more of the cheerleader thrown in there. But one of the biggest differences, and this is where I find it so helpful in divorce, is that most coaches, and we're talking just specifically about divorce coaching now, have been divorced before. Okay, they got into this field, and yes, they probably have a mental health background or a legal background or a finance background like you do. But we have the vantage point of having been there before. Now, the reason that's important and the reason that differs from therapy is most therapists are very much discouraged from self-disclosing. You don't typically bring a lot of your life and your experience into a therapy session as a counselor, because it's all about the client. As a coach, you can do a little bit of that within reason. You don't want to do too much and have it be about you, but you can do more of that. And you can even take off your coach hat and be like, I'm just going to give you some advice now. I'm just going to tell you what I would do. You cannot do that in therapy. And let me tell you, clients love that. That's what they want. They want someone who's been there and done that. And many therapists have not. And even if they have, they're actually not supposed to tell you. And then clients get frustrated because they want to feel less alone. So in my opinion, that's kind of like one of the biggest differences. And when I meet with people and I give them a little bit of insight from my own experience, they love it. They absolutely love it, because it makes them feel so much less isolated. There's hope there. There's someone who's a few chapters ahead of them. Most coaches are just a few chapters ahead of their clients. They don't have to be like years out of it. They may be 2-3 years out of it. And that's helpful because it's very fresh perspective.
I got to tell you, it's so interesting you say that, because I can tell people, I'm an MBA, CPA, certified divorce financial analyst, trained mediator, going through collaborative training. I have a radio show on divorce. I can tell them all these things, years in the business.
Right.
And as soon as I tell them, by the way, I've been divorced, I get street creds immediately, right?
Exactly.
It's like all of a sudden, like, oh, he gets it.
Yeah.
Like all the other stuff didn't help me. That's what did. And I think that is a very, very important piece. And part of what I love about it is, especially if it's done right, is I firmly believe that somebody going through the divorce process needs to be engaged in their divorce outcome. They need to communicate. They need to know what it is, based off kind of the priorities and values that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that working with a therapist, that always gets relayed into the divorce team, even if they are part of the divorce team.
Exactly.
As a coach, I do see that encouraged far more when it comes to the divorce process as well. And I do think that can have a very positive impact in people's lives as well.
And one other thing that I'll just sort of like mention, in regards to the difference between the two, a coach is going to be a way more, they tend to hold you a little more accountable. So they will say to you, email me between now and the next session and let me know you've done X, Y, Z, or I'm going to give you this homework and I want you to, email it to me or text me. You don't find that in therapy. So the accountability piece is very important. And I'm not I am starting to be a counselor. I'm not at all like poo-pooing on therapy, but it's so much more, the trauma and the pathology and potentially diagnosing a mental health condition. Coaching is way more directive. It's way more goal oriented. And when you're in a divorce, you want to go, what do you want to do? You want to go from A to B. And that is the definition of coaching. Ideally, if you have some of that other stuff going on, you're working with your therapist as well. They can be very complementary, but there's a big difference between the two.
Yeah, and that's something important. You don't choose one or the other. You're certainly welcome to work with both.
Exactly.
Often adding professionals into or onto your team gets a better outcome for you, whether it's emotional or financial, and often at a lower price point, especially if you use the right professionals for the right idea. And one of the things I'm going to kind of paraphrase, because we are out of time in about 2 minutes, but one of the things I know we've discussed offline, where I was going to ask you about is, when is the right time, or do you have to wait for the divorce to be over? The answer is no. You cannot do this in a day or a week or a month. So, it takes effort to break habits and to break routines. So you cannot go from signing your settlement to all of a sudden being transformed tomorrow. This is something that takes time. And yes, it's going to take effort. And that's another good reason to have a divorce coach, because they will, as you've just mentioned, hold you accountable in many ways. They're going to give you homework. They're going to ask you to say, did you get that done? Were you struggling? What did you run into? Those are all very, very important pieces of it.
And your lawyer, I know we almost finished. I want to say one more thing. Your lawyer likes it because your lawyer doesn't like it when you're saying this fee is insane. Why is this fee so high? This legal fee.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the time you babbling about the thoughts, and that you're angry and you're venting. Guess what? You can do that with your coach at a much lower hourly rate. You're not going to, the legal advice is for the lawyer. The mindset is for the coach. And the lawyers like it as well.
And they train. Your coach is trained in how to guide you through that kind of a discussion as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So one more time before we finish up, how can people get in touch with you?
On Instagram at Melissa Kalil Coaching, and then on my website, Melissa Kalil, KALIL.com. I have a downloadable free divorce recovery guide. And I'm on Instagram all the time. And just, anyone that has questions about divorce coaching, completely passionate about this field, please reach out.
Melissa, thank you. This has been great. I think we covered so many pieces that people don't cover. They think, I'll get to it, and they need to get to it now. They need to think about it, because some of that might be in the settlement agreement. What happens if you need 2 or 3 years of education, and maybe you can put that into the settlement agreement to get some kind of additional positive financial backing in order to kind of get to your dream. So I think all of these things have been so vitally important for people to think about. I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me through my website. That's lifecycle.financial. Again, lifecycle.financial. You can reach out to me with questions for me or for Melissa. And thank you, Cece Schatz, our producer, for just letting us be able to run over and make it so easy for us to have such a great discussion.
You still didn't ask about my dating, my dating story, so we're gonna have a whole other episode about that.
I am sure you will be back on the show. You don't need to worry about that. So thank you again. Thank you, Cece, and have a great rest of the week.